Well, it finally happened. Traptrix got a structure deck, giving the archetype a ton of new cards. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that I've tried patching up Traptrix's weaknesses in a few different ways, like by turning it into a combo deck with Sun Avalon, or getting free Xyz materials with Vernisylph. But what are those weaknesses? Well, as any Traptrix player will tell you, having their normal summon interrupted is usually a death sentence for them, even with a simple destruction effect. That, and of course... Because of this, the deck has a lot of trouble going second, since they only really start gaining momentum while Sarah's on the field and a trap is activated. And once you're past Bronze rank in Master Duel, people aren't usually nice enough to imperm your Sarah. So does this new support help them beat their weaknesses? Well, I'm happy to announce that, yes it does. Let's address the normal summon vulnerability, like for example your first summon being destroyed. Arachnocamper can summon itself as a quick effect if you control a Traptrix monster, serving both as extension and also a way to make Sarah if your normal summon is about to be destroyed. We also get Traptrix Garden, which gives you an extra normal summon of a Traptrix, so that serves not only as recovery, but also makes other cards like Dionea much better, since her normal summon will let you recover whatever you first summoned and then linked into Sarah. Since it's searchable by another new card, Pudica, we have a few nice little combos that lead straight into Sarah and Araphlesia. Then, when it comes to not losing to Lightning Storm or Feather Duster, Arachnocamper's second effect will often save you. On top of summoning itself as a quick effect, it also protects your back row from destruction, once per card, so you can even wait for your opponent to activate their back row removal to then summon this in the same chain, causing them to waste it. Now what about going second? Well, they've got some new tools for that too, notably their new Link 3 monster, Atopus. Just by having a normal trap in the graveyard, it boosts your Traptrix monsters by 1000 attack, bringing itself to a more respectable 2800 attack, as well as finally breaking the 3000 attack barrier on Pinguicula, their new Xyz monster. Traptrix were notably bad at beating over basic monsters in battle, so this will help a lot for their battle phase. Then, it can also negate an opponent's cards, not just monsters, up to the amount of plants and insects you control, and then by banishing a trap, you also get to destroy one of them. This gives them a much better shot at weakening a board enough to then control it with your traps, so it's a very welcome addition to the deck. But how will you get traps into the graveyard reliably on turn 1? Well, besides Vesiculae, who we already have, Trap Tantalizing Tune is basically a Lure of Darkness that discards traps or Traptrixes instead to draw 2 new cards, so basically free consistency that also sets up Dionea and Atopus. All this becomes even better with Holutia, an in-archetype Shade Brigandine that can activate itself on turn 1 by discarding a trap. Being a Traptrix card as well as a Hole Trap card makes it infinitely more searchable though, which is incredibly useful for combos, as you'll soon see. This lets you trigger Sarah on turn 1, and by doing so, allows you to go into any rank 4 you want easily. All of this adds up to a control deck that has way more options on turn 1 to summon some strong Xyz monsters, set up a ton of interruptions, and not lose to a Feather Duster or a Ghost Ogre. And once it gets past that first turn, has an incredibly good resource loop to wear down your opponent until they have nothing left. Let's take a look at how to build it now. So here's an option for a Traptrix deck that will use the new support well. It's a very pure build, but for good reason. The new support actually just gets exponentially better and more consistent the more Traptrix and Trap Hole names you run, so I like doubling down on them as much as possible. I've provided a few alternatives at the end that work well too, if you want to customize this a bit. Starting with the monsters, I actually like both of the new ones at 3. There's basically no downside to drawing an Arachnocamper, since it will either be an extender, or you can just keep it in your hand to surprise protect your traps from a lightning storm. Then Pudica at 3 with 1 field spell makes most sense to me, since the field spell works best when searched, and you never really want 2 gardens in the hand since it can't be used as the cost for any of your other cards. Then forget that Pudica is now the best one to summon with Sarah on your opponent's turn, since it will banish the opponent's monster for the rest of the turn. Sure, they do get it back eventually, but that counts as special summoning it, so you can trigger a Trap Hole once again. Also, they won't be able to summon it back if you have Alumeris or Pinguicula on the field, and they just attach it as a material. Then run 3 Dionea, since she just got so much better thanks to the new ways of getting a Traptrix in the graveyard while still being able to normal summon her. And then also run 3 Mermalays since her searching and back row removal is still great. 3 Mantis is perhaps a bit less necessary, since the best combos can't really be done with just Mantis alone, but searching Arachnocampo is still really nice, so I quite like it. Finally, you can take or leave Vesicula at 1, but her extension and searchability can still be useful. Genlycia, however, is a really important card at 1 nowadays, since you'll actually be resolving her on turn 1 as often as possible these days. Getting back a trap has a cost while also searching a new one. Trust me, you really do want to be running her. Then I decided to keep the 3 Parallel Exceeds. They're still really good as a free rank 4 monster, and they let you do some of your cooler combos a lot more easily. Next we're running 3 Tune and 1 Garden. Tune is just great for setting up the rest of your cards, getting rid of cards that you might have 2 copies of in your hand, and letting you get whatever extender you might need, so it's great. Don't forget that it can also recycle banished Traptrixes or Trap Holes, which is pretty useful. If you really want to, you can run 2 of the field spell with the next one as a backup copy, but it's less important past turn 1 anyway, so I didn't bother to. Now for our traps. We want to run a ton of normal traps for consistency's sake, and I stayed mostly within Trap Holes for the searchability of them, but you can just run any normal trap you want for removal. What isn't negotiable, however, is the 3-hole Lutias, since that card is so good. The new Trap Hole isn't really anything mind-blowing, but it's probably worth running at 2 since Graveyard Banishing is pretty nice. For the rest of them, I went with 3 Gravediggers, 3 Nightmare, 2 Bottomless, 2 Floodgate, and 1 Time Space. But honestly, you can change these ratios around as much as you want. Now the extra deck. You'll be using most of these cards fairly often now, since it's so much easier to summon enough monsters to go into them. To start with our links, run at least 2 Sarah and at least 1 Cularia. I went for 3-1 ratios, but 2-2 works as well. Atopus is fine at 1, but you definitely do want that copy. Now for our Xyz monsters, run 1 or 2 Penguicula. I went for 2 since it does have different applications in early and late game. On turn 1 it can be an extender to help make you FD, while later on you'll want one to stick around and be boosted by Atopus, while building up immunity to your opponent's monsters. Don't forget that Penguicula can attach a monster that's banished or sent to the graveyard by any card effects, including your opponent's, so their attempts to Foolish Burial something will allow you to steal it. It's pretty good so long as you remember how versatile it can be. Rafflesia could be at 2 if you want, but it works best on turn 1, so think 1's fine. Allomeris is mostly just an extender, but can also work late game alongside Penguicula to make your traps even more disruptive. Then I like a copy of both Time Thieves too, with Reduo being even easier to make these days, and Double Barrel giving a monster negate is another option that's now a lot more likely to be able to be made, so less of a waste of extra deck space. Of course, you could also just make a Baguska and then eventually a Zeus. Finally, I still think UDF is great in Traptrix. It's so much easier to make 2 Xyz monsters in this deck now, and the combination of high attack, destruction immunity, and stealing opponent's monsters makes it a great boss monster for the archetype. Now, if you want to stray from using Trap Holes as your interruptions, Ice Dragon's Prison is probably the best choice, giving powerful disruptions while working well with your Xyz monsters. It could easily replace a few Trap Holes. Infinite Impermanence is also nice for doubling as a hand trap, while also being a normal trap to synergize with the deck. Since we're not really using Shade Brigandine anymore, it also doesn't matter that you get a trap into the graveyard. Basically, if you're just building with the structure deck, you can stick to the Trap Holes, but if you don't mind spending a bit more, get these and swap a few cards out. However, speaking of cards included with the structure deck, Evenly Matched is at the very least good for your side deck, and again it's a normal trap, so at worst can be used to pay a cost. Ash Blossom is also obviously a good card in a ton of formats, so you can probably find room for that by cutting a few Mantises and Trap Holes. Finally, Desires could be good in some builds, but does conflict with a few one-offs like the Field Spell and Genlycia. Use it at your own risk. Shade Brigandine is also still okay, but you're more likely to have a trap in your graveyard nowadays, so you might not be able to activate it turn 1, making it a lot worse. All of these customizations are up to you, but the main deck is what I've been using to show the following combos. So without further ado, let's take a look at them. Let's now playtest some hand, with this first one starting as Pudica for a basic combo. Normal summon her to search the field spell, and then play it before linking into Sarah. Then use the extra normal summon on Dionea, reviving the Pudica. That will also trigger Sarah to search Hole Lutia. Activate it by discarding a Trap Hole, giving you a material and triggering Sarah's other effect, searching again Lycia. You'll now tribute her for her effect, getting back the bottomless trap hole while also searching another trap hole. With a trap monster on the field, you can make a redoer for its powerful removal, and then use Arachnocamper's special summon effect to give you materials to then go into a Rafflesia. This ends with a bottomless trap hole, a Gravedigger's trap hole, non-targeting non-destruction removal, as well as Sarah's resource generation, Rafflesia's choice of any trap hole, and of course Garden's battle protection, all with Mantis ready to go next turn. In this one we started with Garden in the hand as well as a Dionea. We'll summon the Arachnocamper just as a material for Sarah, and then revive it with Dionea to search a trap hole with Sarah. Then we activate Holutia by discarding Nightmare, triggering Sarah again for Genlycia. Then we once again get back to discarded trap while also getting a new one from the deck. Now as the two materials, we make a Pingricula, you can search an Arachnocamper, who then special summons itself. You can now link into Cularia, who not only revives Arachnocamper to protect your back row from destruction, but will also let you reuse one of your trap holes by resetting it. Don't forget that Pingricula can attach a monster that was destroyed by one of your trap holes, and then it becomes immune to that monster's type. Now let's see a hand with both Tune and Parallel Exceed. Since we have two Mantis, let's get rid of one, drawing Arachnocamper and a trap. We then summon Mantis and search for Siculae, before linking into Sarah. That will trigger Parallel Exceed to get a second copy out. You can make Alomeris and revive Mantis. That triggers Sarah for a search of Holutia, who will then use to trigger Sarah to search again Lycia. That will get back to Time Space Trap Hole and search a Bottomless Trap Hole, and with the remaining materials, we make a Pingricula searching a Dionea. The two Exceeds monsters can then overlay into a UDF, but we're not done yet. By sending a trap, we summon a Vesiculae, as well as getting out Arachnocamper with her own effect, allowing us to overlay into Rafflesia for some protection as well as whatever trap hole we need, leaving our board with 4 pretty strong interruptions, as well as Dionea ready for next turn. Let's do one last test hand, this time discarding Mermaleo with Tune. This lets Dionea summon her back on normal summon, before making a Sarah. We already have Holutia, so we can use it here, once again getting Genlycia to retrieve our trap and searching 2 more. Now instead of doing anything fancy, don't forget that you can still have the option of just making a Baguska backed up by a bunch of traps, and by the time your next turn rolls by, you'll be able to link up into Atopus pretty easily to finish off your opponent's board. And so that's the deck! Will you be picking up the structure deck for the new support? I know I will. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe, and other than that, thanks for watching!